Welcome back to the How to Podcast series. Okay, things are going to get rough today. We got a great guest on as a guest co-host. Cory is here, and I'm excited because we're gonna be wrestling through some topics today. We're gonna come off the top rope and attack, pin, all of those things that say you can't be a podcaster. We're gonna pin them to the mat for the 3 count. We're gonna do all the things. And before I start, I have one message for everyone. As we go into this episode, I want you to forget everything you know, because none of it is real. But you can learn to be great. You can be just like new. Cory, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Hello today.
Does that sound familiar at all?
It was very familiar and very fun. So I appreciate you doing that. And that'll be a reference that goes over everybody's head besides mine. I'm the only audience for that. So
there you go.
I appreciate it.
I've been going down a wormhole of videos of you wrestling. Okay, I'm a wrestling fan. I love wrestling, and to have a chance to talk to somebody who actually does it is kind of like a bucket list item for me. I got to be quite honest. So really cool. I love watching.
I hope
your videos.
I can live up to the hype then, I guess.
Oh man, like some of the stuff I see you do on YouTube, I'm like, your email address really makes sense now as I kind of put it all together. My back would hurt as well just watching some of this stuff. So Great to have you here, fellow podcaster. I've never wrestled anything except, I don't know, maybe my finances. That's about it. So I'm so happy to have you here. It's great to have you.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
This is good stuff. Tell us about your podcast. What is it? What's it all about? Let's go there first.
So the podcast is called Evolving with Cory Kastle. Basically, I started doing the podcast, this specific Evolving with Cory Kastle, I started doing in 2017. So I think since beginning it, I didn't want it only to be called Evolving with Cory Kastle because Cory Kastle is my name, and that's, I wanted to be branding or whatever, but I wanted it to be like, if you start listening to this show at any given time and you continue and you subscribe at that moment, the version of me that you continue to hear continues to evolve as you are subscribed. So the version of me that started the show in 2017 to now, 2023 or 2023, I think when did it change from calling it 20 or like 2000 something to 20 something? Because I don't think I've said 2020, 2021. I think I've said 2021, 2020, but 2017, I would call it 2017, not 2017. I mean, some people called it 2017, but I don't think I did as much. But
I've never thought about that. I like it.
Yeah.
I've never thought of that before.
These are the tough questions.
These are the tough questions that we're going to crack today. And your artwork makes sense as I hear you talk about your evolution of you and your story. Your artwork behind you there makes a lot of sense.
Thank you.
I like it.
For the people, for the audio only listeners.
Yes, please.
I have an evolution chart that's on this tapestry here behind me. It's on the logo for my podcast, Evolving with Cory Kastle. Available on all podcasting platforms.
Everywhere. Everyone needs a good tapestry, is what I would say, is one of the learnings. And you mentioned you didn't make that yourself. How'd you get that?
No. I had a friend who's a fan made this logo for me, and then my best friend put it on a tapestry for me and gave it to me for my birthday. I think I might have been my, what was it? It was probably 4 or 5 years ago. So, I mean, that isn't currently the podcast logo. The podcast logo art is something different, but that's what it originally was.
Good. Amazing. Let's talk a little bit about your wrestling career. I would love to, for those wrestling fans that are listening to the podcast.
Yeah. Whatever.
So let's talk a little bit about your background and how long you've been wrestling for, all that great stuff.
Sure. Okay. I'm sorry. I don't know why the video camera turned off.
That's okay.
All right. Um, so hope you don't mind bearing with me just a sec here.
No, no problem at all.
See why it's why it's being poopy pants.
Poopy pants.
So, all right, it's giving me that camera now, but
All right.
this works just as fine.
Very good.
So, I start. What was the question you wanted to ask me?
Yeah, I just tell us a little bit of your wrestling career, how long you've been wrestling for, just a lot of wrestling listeners to the podcast would love to kind of get your backstory as well.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so I guess probably the stuff I'm most famous for in the wrestling business would have been when I began my career, which would have been in the early 2000s in CZW, which was kind of a pretty big deal back then. But that time, so like 2002 was when I first started, and I was trained by John Dahmer and Eddie Valentine at the CZW wrestling school. So I would say, yeah, if any kind of research was to be done, any kind of research was to be done on who I am, the stuff you could probably find would be the old Combat Zone stuff that I did in like 2000, the early 2000s. So they're probably 2002, 3, and 4 would probably be the most like searchable stuff you could find of Cory Kastle as far as like what I've done in the wrestling business, as far as like notoriety wise. But if you just go on YouTube and you look up Cory Kastle, you see a whole bunch. You'll see a whole bunch of videos and matches that I've done.
And just go to Google and type in Cory Kastle, and
Or
it's
that,
everywhere,
yeah,
everywhere. It's amazing. Okay, so what was the idea about starting a podcast? How did you even figure out how to do all this stuff?
Well, so it was the very beginning of it was in 2012 probably. I did have a brain surgery in 2011, which kept me away from doing anything in the ring. So I wasn't able to, scratch that creative itch that I had been created. I have been scratching that itch for many years. And then 2012 came along, and I was hanging out with my best friends, Matt and Rick, and we started our comedy podcast. So back during that, also I started doing comedy more often as well. So I was just kind of creating an outlet for myself, just to kind of be creative. And we started doing a podcast where it was just like we would talk about wrestling, we talk about movies, and we talk about stand-up comedy, we would talk about music, we would talk about any random thing, and we called that show Pod Trash. And we ran that show for maybe, I don't know, we maybe did it for like 4 or 5 months.
Okay.
And then we got to the point where I guess Rick at that point had started going to school, taking classes at Connecticut School of Broadcasting. So we then began recording shows in the studio at the Connecticut School of Broadcasting, but we wanted to make it more like professional because now we were in a studio. So then we decided that we were going to pick a theme, and we were going to make it a show about pro wrestling. So we called it Wrestle Rock, right? RASSLE Rock. And we started doing Wrestle Rock. From there, I guess we kept it a long running show. We kept going with it. I think for 7 or 8 years. We actually just stopped recording in 2022, right?
Wow.
So we while we were recording our show, I just remember we were very limited. We could talk about professional wrestling for 1 hour every week. And I remember at the end of every show being like, oh man, I wish there was so much more I could say. I wish there was more I could dive into about my life and questions that I'd want to ask people, and like the kind of show I'd want to listen to that isn't just this very niche thing.
Yeah.
So then I reached out to a studio locally, and I asked them about studio time. So I got the show started on the internet radio station. Evolving with Cory Kastle was originally, it was just a Monday night internet radio show on Aquanet Radio. This is a local radio station around here, and and it was just like I would play music and I would chat with friends. Sometimes I'd have no guest and it would just be me, and then I got to the point where I started recording them and putting them on as podcasts. So the first one's still not very good. Like if you listen to the beginning episodes, if you were to go back in time, go, all right, I'm gonna go listen to Evolving with Cory Kastle from the very beginning to see where the evolution has begun. You'll be like, oh wow, yeah, that's a real evolution.
That's great. But I think that's the one thing that a lot of podcasters struggle with is starting. And I think the one thing you mentioned was, like, don't be discouraged. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have everything figured out. Just start. Just get your voice out there and don't let anybody tell you you can't do this. I'm sure that in wrestling, you've had voices and people say, hey, Cory, maybe this is not for you, or there's other people who are better than you, or whatever. The crowd. Oh man,
there's always going to be somebody better than you. There's in anything you do, there's always going to be somebody who's better. But like that doesn't mean that they're better at everything. They're just going to be better at some things. So like, there's a million people doing a thing that you wish to be doing. That doesn't mean any of those people are you. That doesn't mean any of those people have the life view that you have, or the perspective on things that you have, or the opinions that you have on things. There's everybody else is taken. Be yourself.
And I guess, again, I'm going to keep going back to wrestling because that's what I just love watching your videos. But I'm sure that, they're like, okay, Cory, you're no Jake the Snake Roberts. You're no Hulk Hogan. You're no Andre the Giant. Who are you? When there's a world full of these experts for podcasting, we got the Joe Rogans. Well, Dave, you're no Joe Rogan, so give up. There's no chance for you. But we can all build an audience and community around what we do. You have fans who love your stuff. They made you a tapestry. Come on. Like, there's somebody loves what you do. All you have to do is get out in front of them and share who you are. People will fall in love with you, and there you go. That's how you build a community.
Right. And even if like somebody could hear that and go, oh, easy for you. You already had fans from being a wrestler. That's not necessarily the case. That doesn't mean that the fans that I had or have in wrestling translated over to listening to the podcast, because it takes a little bit more effort to seek out a podcast. So the thing that I'll constantly say is how grateful I am for the currency of your effort, because in this world, that's such a precious currency, because like you're competing with every other thing. Like you could not listen to me and then just go scroll through TikToks or Instagram Reels or YouTube Shorts. Like your attention span is 15 seconds at a time. So to be able to go, oh, I'm going to ask you now to consume. Sometimes my episodes go 2.5, 3 hours. Like, so to ask you to do that it would be a big ask, and only the real ones will stick around. So like it's not like I'm doing this for financial gain. I'm doing this because it's a living record of my life. It's my legacy. So regardless if I have a big fan base or not, I mean, I would love to have a huge fan base, which some of my episodes get a lot of love and some of them don't. That's just the nature of the world we're in right now. But all I want to do is make sure I continue to put out the kind of show that I'd want to hear. I want to make sure that I stay genuine in my message, and I want to stay being a sincere value in people's lives. I want to continue.
Here we go. Let's hit the drum.
To beat my drum and
There you go.
and
Yes.
you know, it means so much more than just a prop. It's like it represents consistency. It represents the ceremony of what we're doing here, you know?
I like it. I like it. And I guess the one thing too, a lot of people I talk to in podcasting, they listen to podcasts, they get inspired by podcasts. So they think that the person they listen to that is so far down the road from where they are, that's their starting point, that I have to start where they are now. And that's a misconception because everybody steps into the ring for the first time. Nobody knows who you are. They announce you on the card. You step through the ropes and they're like, Cory, who? Who's this guy? Who's this guy? Right? I've never heard of this guy before. Everybody steps into the ring for the first time and no one knows who you are. So don't compare yourself to somebody who's been doing this for a long time. You over 10 years. Somebody who's been doing this for a long time.
Comparison is
don't do
it robs joy. Like it's really I can't compare myself to you in any way, and you can't compare yourself to me. And we're like, no. The only comparisons we can make is to our former versions of ourselves. We can be like, well, I'll just be a better version of me today than I was yesterday.
And then I think what happens is because they get discouraged because they feel like they can't be like their idol is today, they go back and sit in the stands and say, wrestling's not for me, podcasting's not for me, because I'm not at that level that I attained to be at. And I'm not ready to do the work to get there like my idol has done. So they feel hopeless and they give up. So they go back to the stands.
Well,
didn't do that.
The work for me is going to be different than the work was for you. The work for me is going to be different than it was for anybody else. It's not the same ball game for everybody. So, I mean, not to say that I have any privileges above anybody else because of having already a name or whatever, but I don't, you know what I mean? It's not like that has served me in any way as far as like making me a better podcast host. It's just who I compare myself to is who I used to be versus other people. And I mean, it's definitely important to be inspired, to find the kind of shows and the kind of things that you're inspired by. Like for sure, for me, as far as podcasts that I'm inspired by, I would say WTF with Mark Maron. Yeah. That was a big inspiration for me. I would say the Joe Rogan Experience was a big inspiration for me. And You Made It Weird with Pete Holmes was a huge inspiration for me. Like that was probably my number one, honestly. Duncan Trussell Family Hour, Aubrey Marcus. So like it's just like I wanted to kind of have the conversations with people where I would, and I think even before I even started doing the podcast, I would talk to people and they would say things that I remember thinking like, oh, that's a pretty evolved way of thinking. So like that influenced the name of the show. Always thinking like, well, pretty evolved. I think when I excuse me. I think when I first originally started it, I wanted to have a co-host. I didn't want it necessarily it just be me. I wanted it to have my friend that I work with, and I wanted to, because I knew he had a very evolved way of thinking too, but he also he had never been in the public eye. Like who knows what kind of, and I didn't know if he'd be even interested at all in doing that. So I just decided that something I'll frequently say, and if you've heard me say it before, it makes sense. So I will say, don't go around announcing everything that you're going to do. Just do the things that you're going to do, and let your actions speak louder than your words.
I like that.
I think I read it in Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill. He said, tell the world what you're going to do, but show them first.
That is so good. Right. Because I heard somebody say too, it's not bragging if you've done it. So there you go. Here's my accomplishments, and now I'm going to talk about them. So, and I think that's great. That's That's a good pattern for us.
And I have to say, most of the people who I have on my show, I'd say it's a real 50-50 between people who have no idea who I am and people who know who I am. Most of the people who I'm talking to, they don't care. They've never followed my wrestling career. They don't know who I mean, I'm not somebody who's a big deal, who like everyone can flip the channels on TV and know who I am. Like I'm not like that widespread penetration. Like I don't have a household name. So like the majority of the people I'm talking to, I'm just being as humble and as like trying to interact in a way where they're kind of trying to get to know me while we're talking. So sometimes, some points will get repeated, but it's because these people that I'm talking to, this is the first time I'm talking to them, or maybe the first time they ever even heard me speak.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to keep using the wrestling metaphors. People wrestle with perfection with their podcast. Mm-hmm. They're like, I want to do my best. Cory, I want my podcast to be something that people love and they connect with. What's your thoughts for a new podcaster? And they're so afraid of not being perfect that they won't release an episode. How do we get past our wrestling with perfection?
Well, I mean, I think nothing you ever do is perfect. There's no such thing as perfect. So as long as you've started, you can continue to get better. You can continue to get better. You can't get better from doing nothing at all. Right. So if you at least do something, if you go, even this example, Spreaker, there was an app called Spreaker. I don't know if it still exists, but they used to do where you could record a podcast that was only 15 minutes long. So you could start out just doing 15-minute episodes just to like get the hang of it. Maybe record 15 minutes, maybe record 5-minute videos, and you don't even need a podcasting app. Everybody's got all the world's knowledge and technology right here in their hand. So you can just record yourself for 5 minutes and be like, this is my mini episode of my podcast, and just test it out. You know what I mean? Like you don't even have to show it to anybody. If you're self-conscious and you feel like maybe you're embarrassed or something, don't put it out. Just as long as you've made it. Just as long as you've made it, then maybe you can start releasing them later when you have enough. When you have a bunch of them, you go ahead and start putting them out. And perfect. Like your idea of what perfect is will come to you while you're doing it, instead of coming to you while you're not doing it. When you're doing nothing, you're going to be further from perfect than if you're doing anything at all.
Yeah. And what about just practice? How important is it just to practice podcasting?
Ooh, man, experience is the best teacher. Right. So, I mean, your practice would be doing it. Your practice would be doing something. What kind of stuff? I always ask, like, what kind of stuff do you consume? Well, you want to ideally, you'd want to put something into the world that's something you'd want to consume. So maybe compare what doesn't exist in this world, like, to going like, well, I like this kind of show and I like that kind of show. I like this kind of show. I like that kind of show. But now I want to hear one hosted from somebody that has got my perspective. Like, if representation is so important, be your representation.
Right. Because I can't imagine stepping through the ropes into the ring for the first time and have never practiced. To not know the moves, to not know what I'm doing. I could really get hurt if I don't know what I'm doing. Right?
Yeah.
So you put a lot of time in. How much time, if you could give yourself like a number, how many hours roughly do you think you put into practice and getting ready before you did like your very first big event? Roughly.
I would say I trained for probably a year and 8 months before I had my first match.
Yeah. And was the crowd there cheering you on during your practice time? No.
No. They, I mean,
right. Yeah. So
they had no idea who I was. I was just a little pimply faced high school kid.
So for podcasting, for anything you do, writing a book, creating anything in the world, it does take some effort to learn and practice and get ready. You don't just have to jump in the ring. Again, if I jumped through the ropes and met you face to face, I would be carried off because I don't know anything of what I'm doing. You do. So I would get hurt. So you do have to spend some time doing that.
I mean, if it's a conversation about professional wrestling, I certainly think there's this, a majority of people probably think they know how to do it and just think like they saw it on TV, so they know exactly how it's supposed to go. But there's so much training involved with all of that, and there's so much technique that like you're gonna miss the technique having just watched on TV how it goes.
Yeah. And that translates to podcasting.
It does.
Because I think everybody looks at it and goes, this looks so easy. I'm going to buy a mic. I'm going to talk into the mic and I'll be rich and famous like Joe Rogan. Mm-hmm. And you're like, that's not how it happens. There's a lot of technique and a lot of things going on behind the scenes. You need to learn and invest and grow, evolve as a podcaster. You're going to start as one way.
Being rich are two totally separate things too, man. I have to say, like, if being famous also made you rich, I wouldn't have to work at Applebee's.
Yeah.
But it's just the way it is.
Right. But we evolve as podcasters.
Right.
We start off where we are and we grow to where we're going to be, to your logo behind you on the tapestry. It's a process. It's not, we don't start. And I think that's part of the problem is we compare our current situation to someone's highlight reel, and they're doing so well. So I want to start where they are. And I don't want to invest the time to get there, as we talked about. So get in there, practice, just hit record, get your voice out there and learn.
I mean, how fascinating of an availability is podcasting? How fascinating is the outlets that this life currently has? Like this kind of technology, this kind of record keeping didn't exist, not even 20 years ago.
Right.
So like, I love it to go. I'd say like when I first started doing my podcast, I remember my mother had, she had burned onto a disc some voicemails that were left for her by her mother and from her friend who had passed. And she said to me, you know how like when somebody passes, you forget what their voice sounds like. And I remember being like, yes, but I don't want that to be the case for me. And I don't want that to be the case for anybody who loves me. I want you to be able to consume this entire, like, this is, I've always been who I am, no matter what. Like, so the version of me that you're going to get on the show is going to be completely vulnerable and completely who I am. So I'm not pretending to be anybody. I'm not playing any kind of character. And I want that to be somebody that, one day when I'm not here, they can go back and they can listen to all that at once, or, over the years, maybe consume all of that, and then hopefully pick up on some perspectives that like change the way they look at some stuff. And if it changes one person, let's say let's pretend for a second. I hate to feel like I'm punching myself in my face here, but like, let's say nobody listens to my show, right? My podcast currently as a podcast is, let's say, a tree falling in the woods, and who knows if it makes a sound,
Yeah, right.
To me, that part doesn't matter as much because I know this stuff's outliving us, and I know that an impact is an ever widening circle. It's just like when you throw a pebble into a lake.
Yeah.
If this, regardless of it's right now or when I'm gone, if my voice can change the perspective of one person and they can just like learn to love differently or learn to learn to be encouraged or have any kind of value into their lives that like impact the lives of the people that surround them, I feel like I've done it all for a good reason.
Yeah.
It's
I
part of
love
my
it.
legacy. It's part of
Yeah.
why I was put on this earth.
And that's the power of podcasting right there. And the impact is goes beyond a number for how many listens you have. To your point of having even just one person listen to your show. Right now, as I do these co-hosted episode, I'm doing solo episodes. I'm doing a 10-episode series called the Appleseed series, based on a quote that I read that said you can count the number of seeds in an apple, but you can't count the number of apples in a seed. In one seed, there's unlimited potential for new apples, right? So as you look at your stats and you see, oh, my episode went out and I had one listen, and you're like, is it even worth it? Like only one person? But what if that one person took that content, took that message you shared, and it changed the trajectory of their life? And now they treat their partner better. They treat their kids better. They show up at work with a new enthusiasm to do the thing because they heard your voice and you've changed their perspective. Their life is different. Is it worth it for one person? It's amazing to think your words have that kind of impact. They go beyond a number on a stat for a listen or a download. It's a real person that listen to your show.
Yeah. Man, I just like everybody else would like to have being a podcaster be my full-time living, to be doing this for a living, to be using my word, using my outlet in a way that could really add value and really change the way people look at stuff. I'm totally fascinated with the idea of inspiration. If I can be somebody who inspires anybody to do anything positively for their life, I would love to do that every day, and affect millions of people. Currently, I'm just, I'm taking swings at the tree. You know what I mean? The axe doesn't go all the way through the tree the first time you swing it.
Yeah, right.
And I just got to keep on swinging my axe. I got to keep on beating my drum.
I love it. I love it. So what are the plans for the podcast going forward in the future? Do you have some thoughts around how you want to proceed from today?
I'm just gonna stay consistent, man. I don't have huge plans. I'm not a plans guy, as the Joker would say. I look like I got any plans. I'm a dog chasing a car. I wouldn't know what to do if I caught it. But
I love it.
So I'm doing my podcast, Evolving with Cory Kastle. Usually episodes drop on Spotify and Apple every Monday, but I put them on my YouTube channel usually the day after they come up. So that's a bonus. Like if you wanted to subscribe to my YouTube channel, you'd get episodes earlier than you'd get them if you're subscribed on Spotify or Apple Music or Apple Podcasts. And I just want to get better, dude. That's all I want to do. I just want to get great at this, undeniably great at this. So right now at this point, this to me is success practice. This is where I'm going. The stakes are kind of lower. I know it's going to eventually get to the point where like there's all this money and status and whatever riding on every word I say, and making sure that I don't piss off the sponsors or whatever. But I'm also just going to continue to be who I am anyway,
Yeah.
So I want to get to the point where people are starting shows because they've listened to me. Where every day somebody starts a new podcast and they go, "Oh yeah, it's because I listened to Cory's show."
Nice. Right. Yeah. And I can't wait for somebody to name off their top 3 podcasts and to hear your podcast in that list. That'd be like What? That's amazing. So one of the things, I'm going to let you go because I know you got stuff to do. But one of the things I always loved when I watched wrestling growing up was when they would drop the mic from the rafters into the ring. And
Okay.
usually the announcer would grab it, but then the wrestler would grab it and talk to the audience.
Right.
Because now we've gone beyond the match. Now it's a personality. So we go beyond the podcast for a second to the personality of you grabbing that microphone from the rafters. Now you have a mic with you anytime you want, and you can speak to the world about anything you want to talk about. Right now, as we're talking, and people are listening now in Africa, in India, Iceland, New Zealand, they're listening to our conversation. There's no borders. There's no rules. There's no one looking over our shoulder to say we're allowed to say something or not allowed to say something. The mic is yours. It drops from the rafters into your hand at the end of the match. You can address the world. What do you want to say to the world, Cory, that we can end off today and inspire somebody to do whatever that thing is in front of them? Because I think this is a great opportunity just to flip back the attention to you at the end of the match and say, Cory, what's your message for the world?
Something I say, something I say when I'm on the microphone. And sometimes when I'm a heel, I'll tell you what I say when I'm a good guy, and I'll tell you what I say when I'm not a good guy.
Go.
So when I'm a heel, I'll say, you can be a better version of yourself. All you have to do is be more like me. And I'll show you how. And I always talk about if you follow me on Twitter, it says in my profile, the spark, Cory Kastle. The spark is something I started by saying that potential in itself is like an unlit match. We are the spark. We can light the world on fire, or we can just sit in a little cardboard envelope and do nothing. So be the spark. Be the spark.
I love it, Cory. Please tell me that we can have a conversation in the future because, again, I just love listening to your thoughts and your perspective, your evolution as you are growing. Your evolution is ongoing, and you're becoming a better person every day. I love talking to you. So please tell me that we can have another conversation.
Oh yeah, we can absolutely have another conversation. We can have multiple conversations. We don't have to have just one more conversation. We can have an unlimited amount of conversations.
Okay, that's what I was hoping to hear. And then part 2 to that is I want people to connect with you, Cory. If you're looking for guests, if you're looking for whatever, but people to love your show and find you again, let's drop that in again. Let's promote. Come on, tell us.
Yeah, if you go on any platform, the streaming platform, go on YouTube at Cory Kastle is the name of my channel. It's on the bottom of my screen here. You can see it down there at Cory Kastle. That's my YouTube. That's my Instagram. That's my Facebook. That's my Twitter. You can get me on any of that stuff. My DMs are wide open. So don't ever feel like you're nervous to talk to me. I'm just a regular ass dude. It's funny to think about, like, when I started thinking about, like, talking to some of these people that, like, I've always looked up to, or people who are like on a pedestal to me. And I'm like, I gotta ease back that nerves part, because I have talked to people who on my podcast would be people who are like heroes, or like people that I incredibly look up to, but I want to be somebody worthy of looking up to just as much. And I feel like I know that there's people who just get nervous to talk to me, and I kind of laugh at that. And then I go, all right, I get it, but, like, you don't have to be. You don't have to be nervous. Like, don't ever feel like if you're feeling lonely and you got no friends to talk to, reach out to me. I'm gonna respond to you. If I can be a resource to you, Dave, in any way, please don't ever hesitate to call me or text me, or DM me or email me, however you want to get a hold of me. It's absolutely not that difficult to do it.
Yeah. And again, go to Google and just type in Cory Kastle and page 1, page 2, page 3, page 10, page 11. It's all Cory Kastle all the time. So there's something you're doing that's great and right in the world. And I just love the fact that we can throw the spotlight on your podcast and on your evolution
I appreciate
and
that.
all the great things happening, man. So thinking of you today, and I appreciate you making time to do this and talk to everybody and share your story. And again, let's do this again soon. Okay.
Yeah. I like I said, I always say on any podcast that I'm ever on, if this is the first time hearing me, if this is the first time you've ever heard of me, which is, I completely understand. Just, I appreciate the currency of your effort, and the currency of your time is so appreciated. If you want to take the next steps, if you want to just take the action forward and hit that follow button on any of those platforms, if you want to hit subscribe on YouTube, if you want to subscribe to Dave's show, man, I'm always so grateful for that. I want to make sure I let you know, man, this life is hard. Be kinder to yourself. It's people are lining up to shit on you. Don't be one of those people doing that too.
Right. There you go, everyone. Cory Kastle. Great to have you on the show. Thank you for co-hosting with me.
Thanks.
Enjoy your day. Yeah. Thank you for making time to do this. Appreciate it.
Be fun and have safe.
Hey, it's Dave jumping on here at the end. I hope you're doing well. Thank you for listening to the How to Podcast series. Putting this out there for you. You're starting a podcast and you're like, Dave, the technology is giving me a headache. This editing thing is, I don't know, it's banana pants. I can't figure it all out. And you're thinking, if there was somebody who could help me with my podcast, I would pay them to do the editing for me. Guess what? I'm actually doing that. I have clients now, past guests who've been on the show on one of my other podcasts, on this podcast. I'm doing some podcast consulting. I'm doing podcast editing. I'm helping with people launching their podcast, getting it, all the technology stuff, all getting your podcast in all the players, helping you with your YouTube channel, your website. Oh, it just goes on and on. It goes on and on. And I would love to help you. So instead of going to Fiverr or Upwork, I've been on there. I keep trying to get on for jobs and nobody's paying attention to me. And I need attention. I would rather work with you as a listener of the show. So here's what I'm saying. Go to howtopodcast.ca, leave me a voice message, tell me what you need, and let's work out something that works for you and your budget. And if you need full service or you just need something quick like a drive-through type service, I'm there for you. I got you. And if you like what you hear on any of my 7 podcasts, I can do that for you. I can. And I'd love to work with you because you are amazing. And I'm there to help you, whatever you need. howtopodcast.ca. Reach out, let me know what I can do to help you with your podcast. Thank you for listening. Catch you on the next episode. Take care.